Thank you, Professor Jeremiah Stamler, for this interview and for your warm hospitality. Thank you, Gloria, too. We are in Minelea, a wonderful place in the south of Italy, in the Parco Nazionale del Cilento. And next door used to live a couple of friends of you, Mr. Keyes and Mrs. Keyes, Ansel Keyes and Margaret Honey, who are worldwide known as the pioneers of the studies of human nutrition. You have been, Professor Stamler, one of the closest colleagues and friends of Professor Ansel Keyes. How did you meet him?
Through the American Heart Association and its national meetings in the United States that began in the 50s and 60s. We both were participants. We both were interested in prevention and in epidemiology of cardiovascular diseases, and we very quickly became associated.
Would you describe us, Professor Keyes, and his approach to research?
First of all, it was multifaceted. Population studies, clinical studies, animal experimental studies. He and his colleagues were involved in every aspect on fundamental questions of causation, not just process, but why certain lifestyles were associated with high rates of heart attack and other lifestyles were associated with low rates. The key question for medicine, causation. If you know causation, you can mobilize efforts to block causation and prevent. Keyes and I were both very concerned with such questions.
You are considered the most important cardiovascular disease epidemiologist of the world and the founder of the preventive cardiology. What's the connection between food and heart?
Food plays a very important part either in the causation or the avoidance of the major epidemic cardiovascular diseases, first and foremost, heart attack. It does so through its influence on major risk factors which are important in addition to diet itself. Diet influences blood cholesterol. Diet influences blood pressure. Diet influences weight, obesity. Diet influences the risk of diabetes. So nutrition is obviously very important.
You invented the term risk factor. Salt is one of them.
Yes, there are lifestyle risk factors, smoking, aspects of nutrition, physical inactivity, and there are metabolic risk factors which are influenced by diet, blood cholesterol, blood pressure, blood glucose, and weight. So these are the keys. It's very easy to say these are the key factors now, but it took a lot of research to demonstrate that.
Did you find any enemy during this long research time?
Well, the people in certain circles of the food industry who were making high fat, high saturated fat, high cholesterol products did not like us. The egg industry, because egg yolk is very high in cholesterol, did not like us. The tobacco industry did not like us. Yes, we had many people who tried to obfuscate and obscure the meaning of the research and block its application for prevention.
Somebody told me that Professor Keyes and you should have won the Nobel Prize. Do you think it's right?
I have no judgment on this question.
Okay. How was the Mediterranean diet when you arrived in Italy in the 60s?
My recollection is that already by the 60s, from a practical point of view of what people were eating, even in the South, the Mediterranean diet as classically described was no longer what was going on. It disappeared. Italy, including southern Italy, followed the classical United States while the United States was trying to learn from Italy. It's a peculiar contradiction.
Yes, it's a paradox of history.
Yes, exactly.
What's the difference between the traditional Mediterranean diet and what you have recently defined modern Mediterranean diet for the 21st century?
If you look at the papers that describe the classical Mediterranean diet, you will find it was high in salt, it was high in oils, which are very caloric, it was perhaps not as high in protein as one might like, not protein from meat, but protein from low-fat and fat-free dairy products, protein from fish, protein from vegetable products, fagioli, pasta fagioli, etc. So when we originally encountered the Mediterranean diet, I did not myself do research on the Mediterranean diet. Keyes did a lot of research. I followed very closely what Keyes was doing, kept informed, learned from it. When we made recommendations, we recommended what I call the modern Mediterranean diet, like Nicotera 40, 50 years ago, but low salt, not too much alcohol, not too much oil, control calories, prevent obesity.
Do you think that Ancel Keys and the scientists of the 7-country study discovered the Mediterranean diet or invented it?
Well, they certainly didn't invent it. It was eaten long before any of us were around, but they certainly played a key role in discovering it and noting its importance, particularly from the point of view of its influence on blood cholesterol. Keyes very clearly focused on aspects of eating in Naples, for example, among the common people, and in Nicotera, which was researched by Flaminio Fidanza and Alberto Fidanza. They emphasized the components of the diet that kept blood cholesterol low. In all of these populations, blood pressure tended to be high, and nobody talked about that until I became the one who got difficult and said the Mediterranean diet is great, but with limitations. Too much salt, too much oil, too many calories, some men, too much wine. We have to have a modern diet which emphasizes the need to pay attention also to these factors and not just the factors that influence blood cholesterol. Those factors are saturated fat, cholesterol, caloric balance, fiber. They influence cholesterol, but we also want to influence blood pressure and prevent these populations from having high rates of high blood pressure, pre-hypertension, hypertension, ictus, stroke, etc.
Many people think that the Mediterranean diet is essentially based on pasta and pizza. Is it correct?
No. If you read what the literature tells us from that era, first and foremost vegetables, fruits, grains, unfortunately, grains in the form of white flour. That's one of the shortcomings, not whole wheat flour. One of the things we tried to emphasize is whole grain. The Mediterranean diet was not a whole grain diet. White flour, white bread, white pasta, etc. This is one of the modifications in the modern Mediterranean diet to emphasize whole grain, which contains many vitamins, minerals, as well as protein.
Was it difficult to convince the population of the states that the Mediterranean nutritional system was healthier than the Western one?
There is a great deal of material being distributed in the United States about the Mediterranean diet. Some of it is to promote commercial products, and that has its problems. But a lot of it also is to help the American population improve its nutrition. And in fact, the American population has improved its nutrition in the last 40 to 50 years, although it's not as much as we would like, and has, or as a result, a much lower average blood cholesterol level than it had 40 years ago. 40 years ago in the studies we did, average blood cholesterol in middle-aged men was 240. Now it's down around 190, 200. It's a big difference. That's nutritional in origin, improved eating practices.
So what should we eat to preserve our health?
To preserve our health, simple lifestyle, improved lifestyle while enjoying the pleasures of life. It's very important that we emphasize that improved nutrition for better health does not involve abandoning the pleasure of eating. The pleasure of eating is one of the important pleasures of modern civilized man, the human species. We all want to enjoy that pleasure, but we want to do it in a way that's healthier. And that's what we're talking about.
So if it's a question of pleasure, which is the plate you like best?
Pasta fagioli. For me, I also like vegetables. I like salads. I like fruit. So, and I have no big craving for pies or cakes, but I have one little problem which I have to control. I like ice cream.
Me too. In 2009, at the presence of an Italian Senate committee, you have sustained the candidature of the Mediterranean diet to the UNESCO representative list of intangible cultural world heritage. What did you tell to the senators?
In brief, we told the senators that this was a pattern of eating which had important developments in Italy, important for health, and we should go back to this pattern which had disappeared and help the population to enjoy the pleasure of eating in this classical way. And the Parliament of Italy, like the Congress of the United States, has responsibilities to help the people understand this and practice it.
Do you think that Michelle Obama is doing something about it?
Yes, yes. We always think that the office of the president doesn't do enough, but if the office of the president does something, it's better than nothing.
You have been a very important professor of the Northwestern University of Chicago. Now you are Professor Emeritus of Preventive Medicine, but you are also a very influent defender of human and civil rights. Would you explain us what meant for you the case Stamler versus Willis?
Yes, it's hard to explain briefly, but in brief, there was a committee of the House of Representatives of the United States called the Un-American Committee, which essentially did not fulfill the functions a congressional committee was supposed to fulfill. A congressional committee is supposed to collect information for new legislation. This committee never developed any information that led to any legislation. It was rather a political committee to intimidate people from the point of view of the right wing of America. It should never have been created. I refused to cooperate with this committee. I challenged it legally, and I'm happy to say I helped to bury it.
And we are happy too with you, and we thank you for this civil fight you have done. Did Ancel Keys support you during this battle against the HUAC?
From the beginning, he and all his colleagues, Henry Taylor, Henry Blackburn, the whole Minnesota group, played a very important role in the very large movement we developed with the support and chairmanship of Professor Paul Dudley White, Eisenhower's cardiologist, to oppose efforts of this committee to intimidate people.
Was the action of this committee similar to the McCarthy committee?
Yes, very similar.
So did they accuse you of something like being a communist?
Yes.
Were you a communist?
I never tell anybody yes or no. That's a private matter.
Okay.
Anyone wishes to enjoy any political activity, that's a right of people under the Constitution of the United States. First Amendment.
You're perfectly right. What means public health for Jeremiah Stamler?
Public health used to be thought of as sanitation, pure food, pure water, and infectious disease. Modern public health is concerned with all the major chronic diseases as well as the classical public health, and above all their prevention through improved lifestyles and, where necessary, the use of pharmacological agents like for the treatment of high blood pressure or high cholesterol.
So do you think that public health is a matter of Democrats or Republicans or both?
No, it's a matter of the people and the government guiding and helping the people to have better lifestyles.
Because of your genial approach to medicine and because of your joyful approach to life, I would define you the Arthur Rubinstein of cardiology. Do you think that in your lifelong studies there is a connection between intelligence and emotion?
First of all, let me respond to the honor you give me about Arthur Rubinstein. It's very nice of you. I think it's probably exaggerated. I am not of the status of Arthur Rubinstein. He was an extraordinary genius. I thank you anyway. And for the rest, we can stop there. You have another part of that question?
The rest of the question was, do you think that in your lifelong studies there is a connection between intelligence and emotion, brain and heart?
Of course. If you have knowledge and that knowledge leads to strong convictions about its application, that becomes a matter not just of intelligence but of conviction and drive and action. So yes, the two are very closely linked.
Thank you very much, Professor Stamler.
Pleasure. Thank you.